It is a off week for Saluki basketball here in Summer Access 2025. But hey, we got to keep rolling. We got the content. And of course, the strength and conditioning coach, Brandon Schoeneck, who joins us now, which it's your first full summer. This time around last year is when you first got here. So I'm sure, man, this summer's got to be a little bit less hectic, Brandon.
Yeah, it's been good to be used to everything and not like, your head just spinning last year when I got here in July. So, where's this? What do I do with this? What's the normal protocol for this? And then you're also trying to get guys ready. Meanwhile, you're trying to find a place to live, move in, and get situated and used to the commute or whatever, just everything, just the day-to-day flow. So there's just way less unexpected things now. So, and I can get more of my stuff a little bit more automated to where, it's already set in how I want it. So
4 weeks have gone by getting to know this group. What's been, from your standpoint, because you get a different lens than most of the basketball coaches do, what have you enjoyed about getting to know this group and what you've seen from them so far through 4 weeks of the summer?
So far, great energy, ready to absorb and work every day, and then retain what we're doing and build off of that. So, and there's more competitiveness is what I've preached this summer. So I think that's been something that they've been able to, wrap their head around and attack. So
what I really appreciate about getting to know you is, yes, there are definitely some old school strength and conditioning things that always never change, but you are a big person on trying to get as much data as you can. I know Connexion, no doubt, is a huge piece in terms of what you do within practice. But you've also been able to get some new equipment this summer to more of a trial run just to see how it goes. Like, before we get into that piece of equipment, why it's important for you to get as much data, not just for yourself, but to try to help translate that over to the coaches to really get them to fully comprehend and understand maybe how they can adjust their practices or see how workloads are on certain guys.
Yeah, so I have been around long enough that I can be old school, and I think it's valuable that I have both. I'm kind of in the sweet spot. I'm not too old to where I'm set in my ways. I'm not too young to where I'm attracted to the newest, shiny toy, and I'm able to adapt and learn. And I'm not the most tech savvy, but I am very data savvy. So once I learn how to use whatever tech I've been given or we've purchased and get the data going, that I can really attack. So because I'm very proficient with Excel, very proficient with Microsoft Power BI, so I have more answers than we have questions at this point. It's about figuring out what the questions are. So like last year with Connexion, there's two companies that do load management in basketball. There's Catapult and Connexion. When I was at Rice, we had Catapult. We went with Connexion here. Colton had already set up a deal with Connexion when I got here. So, and I'm not, tied to either one.
Yeah.
It's just they're kind of apples to apples. You're measuring the same thing. It's some type of how much volume are we doing, what are we doing, and then what kind of intensity are we running in practice and games, and trying to establish a plan for what type of load management process we want going into games and then coming out of games. So, yeah, we ran with Connexion last year. I have a massive data set of that, and like I said, we have a ton more answers than we figured out what questions we want. But I think I've gained some valuable insight from our player load tracking last year. And so then you touched on the new piece of equipment. Do you want me to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that company asked me to run a demo for the shot tracking camera they have, just for the coaches. So they, this month, do a trial run, set it up for practice, and then it'll capture all of our shots and it'll stat it, so it doesn't matter if it's a drill work, practice, live play, pre-practice, post-practice. I just leave it up and it, uses facial recognition. It clips a bunch of clips and I just assign them to each guy, and then it tracks. We've got now, thousands of shots on some guys, right? So you're looking for a massive sample size because you can't, after one practice, say this guy can shoot, this guy can't shoot.
Yeah.
But, basically the goal is to gather all this, take a look at it with the coaches, see if it's valuable. Maybe it's something where we notice a guy shoots better in certain spots. You want to put, players in positions to play their best. So if we call plays so that it's this side of the floor versus that side of the floor, it's that sort of thing, And then, just being smart about your shot selection. Like if you unguarded in a drill work, shoot a certain percentage, you're probably going to shoot even worse with a defense and fatigue in a game. So you can figure out if a guy can't shoot unguarded in drill work in this spot, you probably don't need to be shooting that shot, And those are decisions for the coaches to make. But the company just asked me to run that for them, run that demo and see if it's something we want to add on to our, player tracking this year. So
what's been the biggest thing that stood out when you've been able to get into the data, when you've been able to pick out the facial recognition within the program? Like, what have you seen that's like, wow, this can be really beneficial, or what you've enjoyed about the trial process?
So, I'll touch on the other technology from last year too. The mainest thing I noticed when I looked at the data is we probably could use a little bit more high power outputs around the game days, right? So you think, okay, you're definitely going to have your guys that play 30-something minutes, but are they really reaching, high speeds or high intensity jumps? It's a lot of just a traffic jam, the basketball game is. So are they really getting out and running? So, and then you're obviously the day before a game not doing too much. And then if we play Wednesday, Saturday, those Thursdays, those become a light day too. So that's 3 days where, a lot of guys are just not getting enough of a power output. It's like a pitcher. If he's not touching, 95, 96 on the gun enough, is he detraining? And it can be. So, your speed qualities detrain very fast in athletics. So if you're not doing things fast, you're going to, lose it. So that's something I think we're going to add this year. I've already taken another piece of tech, our timing systems, our timing gates, which is just a laser. They use them at the combine. Same idea. So I've been bringing that in on training on days where we want to do linear acceleration, making them. We have a score. Look, 10-yard sprint. Here's your score. Are you getting better? Are you attempting it? Are you doing your best? And that's something we can do throughout the season just to maintain those power outputs. And then, for a guy maybe who plays a lot of minutes, I don't know if, we need to necessarily – if he's still getting those accelerations, he's not getting top-end speed, but he's getting enough work. It might just be something on the bike where we just do a bike sprint, not for conditioning, but just to get the legs to create a power output, but something that they can recover from. So that's what I noticed from that. And then so far with this piece of equipment, the shot tracking camera, I've only looked at it a little bit. And I look at a lot of the charts on guys. And, you just see certain points of the mid-range, right, where they're just not going to be efficient there. Or you see they're better on the left side of the floor shooting threes. I think it's common for guys to be better on the right side of the floor when they get downhill, get to the rim. That's their layup side, right? And then they're better shooting, pulling up from the left side. It's just, I'm not saying it's everybody. I'm just saying you just notice a little bit of the trend in a lot of players. But it's just one of those things where you're going to look at it, see what the coaches find value. But I think it just, at the very least, it holds the players accountable that, hey, all these shots you're taking 30 minutes before practice, they're being statted too. Right, we're not just getting up mindless shots. They need to be game-like. They need to be at game intensity. You're moving into it, catch and shoot, or you're coming downhill, passing it, catching and shooting. And our guys Tay and D-Red and the assistant coaches, they do a great job putting those drills together pre-practice and during practice too when we split up and shoot on both ends. So.
Coming up on Friday, we'll have Jorge Moreno and catching up with him. And, man, what a transformation in terms of his body from when you first met him last year to now. What has stood out to you in his transformation? What have been biggest positives and takeaways of what he can do now compared to a year ago? And he's also told me, like, hey, there are still areas that he wants to improve in and still get his body to an even better point than what it is now.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to just get satisfied with where you're at. I would love for him to take another step this offseason, and I think we're going to work towards that. He definitely came in, way too out of shape when he got here, and he got here late too. I got here late. I didn't get here till July, but he didn't even get here till mid-July. So he got 2.5 weeks with me, and then we had a break in August, and then I think the fall was a real shock to him when we came back, because that's when we kind of turn it up a little bit on Fridays with conditioning. So I think, honestly, that was probably when he got his best, was the work we did on Fridays with him. So I definitely preached with him, though, hey, you're going to have to do extra. He was great about coming in on off days last year and at least getting on the treadmill. Just doing an aerobic fat burning zone, which is, something he can recover from. It actually makes him feel better on an off day than just being sluggish and lethargic. So, he'll never be, I hate to say, I don't like to use black and white terms, but,
Yeah.
His body type, the way his bone structure is, I break it down to some people, like, you have guys with really narrow frames, you have guys with wide frames, and you guys have mixed, with narrow hips, wide shoulders, that's kind of your best look, right? Your Dwight Howard, your Adonis looks, right? Well, you also have your Jokic's. They have very wide hips, not necessarily broad shoulders. They carry a ton of just center of mass is low, right? It's right in the midsection. And so those guys are always going to be heavier. The best thing for them, and this is what I've loved about having him this spring, finding ways for him to really get stronger. If you're going to be a big man, you just need to be strong. And that's, for him to get more athletic, that's what's going to take. He's already has to move his body weight, which is high. So you have to get a lot stronger relative to your body weight to gain a little bit of athleticism and just be able to move better. So that's one of the things I saw. He definitely took a step in the spring, and I'm very, very pleased with that. So now we've just got to build on it this summer and keep getting better. So
what's really important for him, for someone that, man, when he was on the floor last year, he had some positive production and was a huge piece to winning some big games, especially on the road. Think of the UIC game, Valpo on the road. It's that durability, trying to last, to build up that, to be able to go just a little bit longer in games. What's the key for him that you try to work on here, of course, that you've worked on in the spring and the summer, to try to get his minutes a little bit more to where he can take on a little bit bigger of a load?
Yeah, that's something we're going to turn up on in July when we come back. There's going to be, a more conditioning component than we had in June, and then it's just only going to get more when we come back in August and September, especially when Coach Nagy gets after him. So, between me and him, he'll need to take us, and he will. He'll have no choice because it's going to be hard. But it's when you get fatigued, right? How much can you keep going? June I kind of focus more on a little bit of an aerobic base. We push a few sleds. We get on the Versa climber a little bit. We get out on the track, and test them on the mile. We might get a few tempo runs. We'll keep the tempo runs as we go into July. And all that is just kind of aerobic base without just doing steady state. It's, you're not sprinting. You're also not jogging. You're kind of maintaining good running mechanics in a straight line, rinse and repeat, right? Well, we'll have some more challenges. We'll encourage the competition probably on Fridays when we get back in July, and it'll be something very taxing. They'll feel their legs in this type of conditioning, and it'll get to where there's a ton of blood flow going to it, and it's just like you just got to keep pushing through. It'll be totally, something that they can recover from. It'll be great, right before the weekend, kind of push them through that tissue. The tissue's got to, in the legs, they have to be able to tolerate, the amount of blood flow and then absorb the oxygen pumping out from the heart. Everybody thinks that, you just got to get your heart rate high. Well, the muscles in the legs actually have to be able to absorb that oxygen in order for them to keep going. So you actually hear sometimes guys talk about, I don't get winded. It's just my legs, they get burnt. And that's something we do high rep sets in the weight room to attack that. We also need to address it in conditioning. So
you brought up feeling your legs. Isaiah Stafford, when we were catching up with him, he was like, Luke, the first couple weeks of the summer were really hard on me. You can see, though, really in practices over the last couple weeks, he's getting much in a better physical shape. Mm-hmm. You can see his confidence and everything really starting to rise, at least to a level that we know we have seen him in the Valley in the past. How have you approached your conversations with him? You get to stretch with him a lot before practice to make sure he's ready to go.
Yeah.
What you've liked about his attitude, his persona, how he's attacked it, and where you see him at right now in that process of getting him back after what was, of course, a very severe injury that he suffered last summer with the ACL.
Yep. He's been great. Between me and Riley, we're kind of both attacking it and collaborating, of course. So he understands he's going to have to do extra. It's almost just from a rehab, prehab type deal. He's going to have a few more exercises he's going to have to do with Riley or me. Even on days where we don't train the legs heavy in the weight room, it might be our day off in the weight room and we're just having practice, but he still needs to do something just to drive, just to keep that thing healing, but also keep it strong. The main thing coming back from the ACL, the quad's got to get strong. You're always going to have a little bit of a deficit from the good leg to the bad leg because that's going to give him his stability and his, is more likely to re-injure a knee when you're decelerating. So that quad becomes a major emphasis when you are decelerating. So, and the hamstrings, of course, got to be good too. And that I really attack the hamstrings in the weight room. But as far as the balance and stability and the quad development, we can do that in the training room, and we can also just add, like I said, those high rep sets with me in the weight room. They're just kind of just pushing it to fatigue. So he's been great that way, and he's been also great, like, coming out, getting stretched, or, rolling out. You just can't let that thing get stiff. And, he did express to me, like, the weather can even affect something like that, how stiff he feels. So it's just a process. You're never going to be back to your normal self just coming off of it. A lot of times they say you get cleared, and then it takes another year to kind of get back to your old self. So it'll just be a process, and there's going to be communication. He's been great about that. So
Look, you've kind of touched up on that. The conditioning and all that is going to ramp up when the guys get back. And this is always a hard question to ask. Actually, questions are easy to ask. You're the one that's got to come up with the answers, Brandon. But maybe it's a few guys, not just one. But, again, because you see it from a different lens than everybody else, who's really stood out just to you in terms of the weight room side, the work that you're like, man, they've made a lot of strides this summer. And I know a lot of that comes with familiarity. So there's 6 guys you've had for over a year compared to the guys who just got here. So I'm sure it probably comes from that group. But who has impressed you this summer just in terms of strides they've made?
Well, I'll speak to the spring first. It was great to have those 6 returners around because they were already, doing great things, I think, with me during the season. And then having them in the spring, they were able to take another step. They're I'm not saying they're way ahead of the other guys. Their bucket is their menu is bigger. I can do more stuff with them. They can do more advanced stuff with them because they have a foundation of what I like and how to do things. So I'm not saying on a different plan, but they just have smaller tweaks that I'll make to the weight sessions with them. I'm just searching for guys that are going to set the tone in there. I can't be this one to set it every day. If I am, we're just going to be okay. We're going to be mediocre, So, I'm really pleased, with Mayo is coming back because he's, our vocal leader. And, and in the weight room, he sets the tone. He brings it, So, and then you see, guys like Drew and Davion take a step. Rollins, he's been in this spring and this summer has been great. And then we touched on Jorge. So I'm really pleased with them. And then the new guys, the veterans, like Prince and Zay, they've been great. I've been really pleased with them. When I get veterans like that, they've been around. They understand, college level strength and conditioning, what it's like in the weight room, the intensity, what we're after. They definitely know. I'm not as rigid with them. Look, you've trained a certain way. There's exercises you're comfortable with. I'm not going to try to reinvent the wheel. You could give me any exercise. It's really not about what you do. It's about how you do it. So that's what we can affect. I don't take an exercise like a squat. There's a back squat. There's a front squat. There's a split squat. There's a Hatfield squat. There's a goblet squat. There's a million ways to do it. So how heavy are you loading it? What type of tempo are you using? What type of rep scheme are you using? That's how you affect, what kind of outcomes you want. So, those veteran guys, they've been great to lean on. The freshmen have been good, like Luke and Daniel and Jalen. They have a ton of energy, great attention to detail, actually, and that's usually something you're, like, worried about, with those young guys because they have to, it's all new to them. They've been great. You get a guy like Max, he's just got that long, lean body, and it's never ideal to have that type of body. That's not a good weight room body. That's a good basketball body, being tall like that. Short guys usually have a better chance in the weight room to be strong because their levers are shorter. Well, I just want to see him move well, and he's shown me, that he can grasp exercises and do a great job with them. So we just got to, get enough calories in it and enough of muscle stimulus so he grows a little bit in terms of strength and size. And we're going to do that. So,
look, one of the guys I know you put in a lot of work with has been Jaheim Weber, and he has done a tremendous job. I know got sidelined a bit here this summer, but what I have been impressed, especially over the last 2 weeks when Jaheim's been out, he's not been out, though. Like, he's been right there in the practices. He's been communicating with his teammates when the times I've been in the weight room with you, It's not like he's tucked in a corner and staying away.
Yeah.
He's trying to do whatever he can to get back for the group. I'm sure you're proud of the strides he has made, but even that he can't do much physically right now as he recovers, he is still active and he's still a part of the team, which to me is the biggest positive from this experience for him that he can take out of it.
Yeah, and I went to him early. I was like, hey, just be a good teammate. Be there for us in the weight room. Everybody else is getting up early. I know you're not going to lift until you're cleared again. But he very much benefited from the redshirt year with me. We drove a lot of high intensity strength. Because that's again, he's one of those big guys. They just got to be really strong before we worry about anything else. I'm not saying that's all we do, but if you have a guy who weighs 250 and he doesn't lift his own body weight in a squat, he's weak.
Yeah.
So and now that's not him. But the guys who are really strong and really athletic. I mean, you take some of those like football guys, right? I mean, those are guys that maybe weigh 200 pounds, 185. They'd squat over twice their body weight. That's why they're so explosive. Everybody tries to chase, this rate of force development, which is great, but, there's a big difference, why in the NFL combine there's guys who weigh 285 and jump higher in the NFL combine at the vert test than the NBA guys do at 215 because they are strong relative to their body weight. So that's, a big guy like Jaheim, we drove that, and he trained a ton with me because game days, he's not going to play, on the road, he's lifting with me. Game days at home, lifting with me. So he definitely got more work in the weight room than anybody last year. And so he has a great foundation, and we just got to build on that. Now, it's a little minor setback. But, he's approached it with a great mindset. He's being a great teammate. He's helping me out. I would love to have a bunch of interns. He's my intern right now. So, when he gets back, he'll be back to being, I won't have any interns again, so it's just me and the 15 players in there or 14 players just getting after them, and it's chaos in there because you got, like I said, I got the returners lift going on. I got, Prince and Zay being the veterans, and you got the freshmen. So, but it's fine. I'm comfortable with it. It's what I'm used to. So, I've been doing this for long enough. It's,
all right,
it's my sweet spot.
This is more me seeking advice, okay? So here at the end, as we wrap up this interview, Brandon, odds are this interview is no doubt going to be listened to by Rodney Watson, who is on his mower probably right now when he's listening. This is when he's on the mower, this is the time where he kind of takes in Saluki basketball through his ears or however he takes it in. Like, how can I keep him active from just sitting on a mower? Like, what are important things that I can do with Coach Watt? Because I'm worried about him. I know he sits on that mower all day. Like, how do we activate him? What are ways that we can make sure when he does come here? He's actually on his way, I think, to he's going across the pond. I think he's going to France this week as well as we record this. So it may be a while till he listens to it. But, like, I am a little worried about him. Like, what are some good activations that I could maybe help talk him through?
Well, we can always get a push mower. No, but, they say for health, what is it, 30 minutes a day?
Yeah.
That just for your heart health, 30 minutes a day. Well, it doesn't have to be every day. I think it's 3 times a week.
Okay.
That's where walking. That's about as good as it gets. For heart health.
Yeah.
It's just slow, steady state. Just get that heart pumping. It doesn't have to be max aerobic speed or max aerobic capacity. Just get that walk in. Obviously I like to lift. So maybe I don't know. What do you have to pull the cord to turn the thing?
His mower's impressive now. When you see the riding mower that he's on,
when
it's
you
really
got to unload the grass clippings, is it you got to lift something out of it, or is it real easy to just dump it in? So that's active. He's getting some sunlight. That's some vitamin D. That's great. For the mood. In recovery. So
Hey, bottom line, R-Dub, if you're watching this, listening to it, you got to push mow everything. That's what I'm getting at it. That's what I'm getting at.
No.
You got to push mow everything.
No absolutes with me. I'll stay in that gray area, Just giving some recommendations.
Just give a recommendation.
Yeah.
Brandon, appreciate the time. Looking forward to the rest of the summer with you. Glad we've had you here for the full summer.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. I'm so glad, this summer we have had the full 8 weeks that we've had access to. Now, it's already been 4. It goes by so quick. But it's I think that'll serve us well that we had the full summer with me. So
that was Brandon Schoeneck. Jorge Moreno closes out our week off of Summer Access interviews on Friday.